On the morning of what should have been the happiest day of his life, Alexander McCallum vanished. Not a trace, not a whisper. He was supposed to be standing at the altar, exchanging vows, promising a future together with the woman he loved. Instead, he disappeared without a word. His suit still hung in the dressing room. His phone left behind, untouched. His wallet, his shoes, even his car, all left in the places they should have been, untouched, as though nothing had ever happened. And what's more disturbing? No one saw him leave. No one heard a thing. Guests arrived, his bride arrived, the music played, but the groom never did. Where did he go? Was he taken? Did he run? Or had something far darker been at play, something waiting beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect life? His absence. It was far from just an empty chair at the wedding. The police were called, but the answers they were hoping for weren't found in the usual places. The groom's family was confused, the bride was frantic, and the investigators were left with nothing. But there were whispers. Strange things started to surface, hidden secrets, family ties, and a history no one knew about. Could this wedding be more than just a disaster? Could it be the beginning of something darker, something far more dangerous? But no one was prepared for the truth that was about to unfold. A truth so shocking it would leave everyone questioning what they thought they knew about Alexander McCallum, his family, and the woman he was supposed to marry. Did Alexander want to disappear? Or was he pulled into something far more twisted? Who was hiding what? And more importantly, why does everything feel like it's just the beginning of something much, much worse? Stay with us, because what happens next is something you won't expect, and the questions you're about to hear will keep you up long after this video ends. What really happened on the day of the wedding? Was it a tragedy? Or something far more disturbing? If you're ready to uncover what no one else dares to, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. In the small town of Inverness, Scotland, where everything seemed calm, quiet, and predictable, something unimaginable happened on the most anticipated day of Alexander McCallum's life. It wasn't supposed to be a day that would shake the foundations of his family, his friends, and the town that had known him for years. It was supposed to be a wedding. The kind of day that lives in family albums for generations, where love is celebrated, promises are made, and new chapters are begun. But by the time the guests took their seats and the music began to play, the groom was nowhere to be found. Alexander had simply vanished. One moment he was there, the next, he was gone. No one saw him leave. No one heard a thing. His fiancée, Claire, stood at the altar, waiting for the man she loved, the man who had promised her a future, to walk towards her. But the aisle remained empty, and the heavy silence that followed was deafening. There was no note, no phone call, nothing that would suggest a reason for his sudden disappearance. Alexander's family rushed to the venue, desperate for answers. But nothing made sense. His belongings, his suit, his wallet, his phone, were still in the dressing room. His car remained parked outside, untouched. But where was he? How could someone just vanish, especially on such a significant day? As the hours passed, and the investigation began to unfold, the pieces didn't fit together. Police scoured the venue, the town, and the surrounding areas. They talked to witnesses, hoping to catch the slightest detail that could lead them to the truth. But the more they dug, the more they uncovered strange contradictions. Some people claimed to have seen Alexander leave with a woman no one recognized. Others said they saw him talking to a figure who disappeared as quickly as he did. There were whispers of mysterious phone calls in the days leading up to the wedding, but no one could say for sure what they were about. The deeper the investigation went, the more troubling it became. Alexander's family was desperate to hold on to the hope that he had run away, that something had spooked him before the big day. But as the days passed with no sign of him, that hope began to fade. The possibility of a runaway groom didn't seem so plausible anymore. Was there something more sinister at play? Was there a secret about Alexander that no one knew? Had he been hiding something from everyone, his fiancée, his family, his friends? The more the police uncovered, the more it became clear that Alexander McCallum wasn't just another man caught in a moment of cold feet. His disappearance wasn't a simple case of nerves or escape. There were far deeper, darker elements surrounding him than anyone could have imagined. But what could those be? And how were they tied to his mysterious vanishing? As weeks passed with no leads, the case only grew colder. But that wasn't the end. The questions kept growing, and so did the suspicions. Claire, the woman who was left standing at the altar, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something she wasn't being told. What did she really know about Alexander? What had he been hiding from her? And why, of all days, did he disappear then, on the very day they were supposed to begin their life together? But it didn't stop there. The investigation took a darker turn when a key witness came forward, someone who had seen a familiar figure lurking around the wedding venue the night before. Someone who claimed to have known Alexander better than anyone. The information was shocking, but was it the truth? Or was someone trying to bury something even more disturbing? As the authorities started connecting the dots, they uncovered strange connections between Alexander and people he had cut ties with long ago. People who didn't want to be found. And Claire, desperate to find answers, began to question everything she thought she knew about the man she was about to marry. Was Alexander's disappearance part of a greater plan? Was there someone pulling the strings behind the scenes, orchestrating this entire nightmare? Or did something happen that no one could have ever predicted? Every moment brought a new revelation, a new suspect, and more unsettling questions. It seemed like Alexander McCallum's disappearance wasn't a simple case of a missing groom, it was the opening act of a much larger and more twisted mystery. A mystery that would pull in more than just the police and his family, but the very town of Inverness itself. And the truth? Well, it was hiding in plain sight. But who would be brave enough to uncover it? And what would they find once they did? Would the truth about Alexander McCallum's disappearance be more than anyone could handle? Or was the case already too far gone, with too many secrets buried in the past to ever come to light? The closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. Someone didn't want these secrets to be uncovered, and they were willing to do anything to stop it. Could the answer be closer than anyone realized? Or was the truth so horrifying that it would remain locked away forever, hidden beneath layers of lies, betrayal, and darkness? The investigation was far from over, and the real story was just beginning. What would be uncovered next? And more importantly, who would make it out alive to tell the tale? Stay with us, because the answers you think you know are only the beginning. Let's start with the key players in this tragic and mysterious story. First, there's Alexander McCallum. A man who, by all outward appearances, had everything going for him. At 29, he owned a successful business in Inverness, a charming and charismatic individual who had built a reputation for being reliable, trustworthy, and full of potential. To his friends and family, he was the perfect man, a picture of stability and ambition. But as the days passed and the investigation dug deeper, the cracks in his perfect life began to surface. Alexander had a history that no one knew about, one that would shock those who thought they knew him best. His business dealings had grown complicated, and whispers of financial trouble started to emerge. It wasn't just debts that Alexander was hiding. No, there was something more, something darker. Friends who had once trusted him began to question his motives, his choices. What was he really running from? Was there something in his past that made him disappear that day? What could drive a man to vanish on his wedding day, without a trace, without a goodbye? Then, there's Claire Forsyth, the bride who had been planning the wedding of her dreams. Beautiful, poised, and madly in love with Alexander, Claire had never imagined that the day meant to mark the beginning of her future would end in devastation. Her love for Alexander had blinded her to the warning signs. She was so focused on the future, on the life they would build together, that she never stopped to think about his past, what he wasn't telling her, what he was hiding. It wasn't just her future that was torn apart in that moment. It was her entire world. Claire's heartbreak was palpable, but as the investigation unfolded, she found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about Alexander. How could the man she loved do this to her? And as the truth began to unravel, Claire realized that there were people who knew more than they were letting on. There were lies buried deep, and as the walls closed in around her, Claire found herself thrust into a nightmare of secrets, betrayal, and dark revelations. Next is Detective Fiona Muir, the lead investigator. Known for her sharp instincts and ability to unravel even the most complex cases, Detective Muir thought she had seen it all. But this case was different. As she arrived on the scene, the puzzle pieces didn't fit. The facts didn't add up. Alexander McCallum had vanished without a trace, and the investigation seemed to lead to more questions than answers. Her experience told her that this wasn't a simple runaway groom case. No, something far more sinister was at play. But what? Detective Muir's calm demeanor began to crack as the investigation dragged on, and with each new twist, she found herself questioning not just the case, but everyone involved. The deeper she dug, the more entangled the story became, and soon she found herself facing a truth she wasn't ready for. Would she be able to solve this case, or was she already in over her head? And then there's Alex's family, Simon and Jennifer McCallum, Alexander's parents. Devastated by their son's disappearance, they couldn't believe that their child would leave them on such a day. They thought they knew Alexander better than anyone, but now, everything was in doubt. Simon, a reserved man, kept his emotions hidden, but Jennifer, his wife, was vocal in her concerns. They had always been proud of Alexander, but as the investigation revealed more secrets, the McCallums began to question whether they had ever truly known their son. They didn't trust the police, didn't trust the people around them. Something didn't feel right, and they wanted answers, answers they felt they weren't getting. But then, there's Claire's brother, Daniel Forsyth. A man who stood in the background during much of the investigation but soon became one of the most important figures in the case. His behavior was off from the start. He was too calm. Too composed. Almost like he knew something the rest of them didn't. He had a history with Alexander, one that no one seemed to know about, and as Detective Muir dug into their past, a pattern began to emerge. Daniel had always been a bit of a mystery. While his sister was swept up in the love and promise of marriage, Daniel had seen things differently. There were times when his words didn't match his actions. There were moments when his eyes told a story of something more, something darker. Was Daniel hiding something? Did he know more than he was telling? Or was he just as lost in this twisted mess as everyone else? As the investigation continued, the lines between suspect and victim began to blur. Claire and the McCallums wanted answers, but they didn't know who they could trust. What had happened to Alexander? Had he been taken by someone? Did he disappear willingly? Or was there something far more disturbing at play? Could a groom's wedding day truly vanish without a trace, or had someone orchestrated his disappearance for reasons far beyond a simple change of heart? Every answer led to more questions, and every step in the investigation uncovered something that only deepened the mystery. But the one thing that was becoming clear was that Alexander McCallum's disappearance wasn't just about one man, it was about the people he left behind, and the dark web of secrets they were trying to keep hidden. And as Detective Muir started connecting the dots, something else became apparent. Someone wasn't just trying to disappear, someone was trying to make sure no one ever found out what really happened. The more they dug, the more the danger grew. But the biggest question still remained: what had Alexander McCallum gotten himself into, and who was determined to keep him, and the truth, buried forever? Could anyone truly uncover the secrets of the man who vanished on his wedding day? Or would the mystery remain unsolved, wrapped in lies and shadows? The investigation was far from over, but one thing was certain: the answers they sought could very well be more terrifying than they could have ever imagined. The day had started like any other wedding day. Claire stood in the dressing room, her heart racing with excitement as she adjusted her gown, surrounded by her bridesmaids. The air was thick with anticipation. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Her friends and family were gathered outside, their smiles waiting to welcome her as she walked down the aisle to marry the man she loved. Alexander McCallum, her soon-to-be husband, was just moments away from making his vows to her. She had envisioned this moment for months, even years. It was supposed to be perfect. But something was terribly wrong. As Claire stepped out of the dressing room, the soft music from the ceremony hall reached her ears. The guests had taken their seats, the flowers were arranged, the candles flickered gently, and yet, the one thing that should have been there, Alexander, was not. She waited at the entrance, a knot tightening in her stomach. The minutes passed. And still, no sign of him. No one had seen him in a while. The wedding planner started to look uneasy, and soon the whispers started to spread. Was he running late? Had something come up? But when they finally checked the groom's room, all they found was his belongings neatly arranged, his clothes, his shoes, his wallet, all present. His phone sat there, untouched. His car was parked outside. But he was gone. At first, it seemed like a simple case of nerves, a groom getting cold feet, but as the minutes stretched into an hour, the situation started to feel off. Claire's excitement faded into confusion, then to panic. Was he playing some cruel joke? Was he hiding in the shadows, waiting to surprise her with a grand entrance? The thought should have been comforting, but instead, it left her with an uneasy feeling. She knew something wasn't right. And then, just when it seemed the uncertainty would drive everyone mad, the discovery was made. In the church, on the cold marble floor, lay Alexander's wedding ring. Its polished surface gleamed under the soft light, but the sight of it there, in such a place, sent a chill down the spines of those who found it. It was so out of place, yet it was the only thing they could identify as belonging to Alexander. The ring wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of everything he had promised to Claire, of the life they were supposed to build together. But there was more. Nearby, a faint trail of blood. Small stains scattered across the church floor, leading toward the altar. It was enough to send everyone into a frenzy. Alexander's ring and blood in the same spot, what had happened here? But there was no sign of a struggle. No signs of violence. No broken furniture, no torn clothing. It was as if he had simply disappeared, leaving only a blood-stained trail and a wedding ring behind. The tension in the room was unbearable. Claire, standing at the altar, waiting for the man she was about to marry, was struck by a horrifying realization. The man she loved was gone, and no one knew why. Was he injured? Had something happened to him in the church? Or was there something more sinister at play? The police were called immediately, and the investigation began. But the first steps revealed no obvious clues. The guests, who had once been jubilant, were now confused and anxious. No one had heard anything. No one had seen Alexander leave. The few people who had been near the church said they had seen nothing out of the ordinary. So where could he have gone? And why had he left in the first place? Was he kidnapped? Did he run away? Or was this something far more complicated than anyone could imagine? As the hours passed, Detective Fiona Muir arrived at the scene. She immediately began asking questions, piecing together the puzzle, but there was something about this case that didn't sit right with her. The bloodstains, the missing groom, the wedding ring, none of it made sense. And as she dug deeper, the web of questions only grew tighter. Who stood to gain from Alexander's disappearance? Was it someone close to him? Someone in his past? Or was it Claire herself, hiding something that no one knew? But with every person she interviewed, Fiona kept running into dead ends. Alexander's family, his parents, Simon and Jennifer, were devastated, but they seemed to have no idea where their son had gone. They were just as baffled as Claire. Claire's brother, Daniel, appeared equally concerned, but his calm demeanor seemed too composed. There was something about the way he acted that didn't match the situation. It was as if he knew more than he was letting on. Was he hiding something? Was he involved in Alexander's disappearance? Or was there a darker secret lurking that no one had yet uncovered? As the investigation stretched on, Fiona began to piece together something unsettling. She learned of strange phone calls that Alexander had received in the days leading up to the wedding, calls that no one had known about, calls that could potentially explain why he had vanished on the day of his wedding. Had someone contacted him? Had they threatened him? Or had Alexander simply been running from something? But even the phone records provided little information, just calls that led nowhere, names that seemed meaningless, and connections that didn't make sense. The deeper Fiona went, the more she realized that this was no ordinary case. This wasn't just a missing groom, it was a web of lies, secrets, and dark motives. Every person in Alexander's life seemed to have something to hide. Was someone trying to erase his past? Or was Alexander trying to escape something he couldn't face? The mystery deepened with every new clue, and with each step closer to the truth, Fiona found herself asking one terrifying question: was this disappearance part of something much bigger than anyone realized? Had Alexander McCallum simply vanished, or was there someone, or something, pulling the strings behind the scenes? What did they want, and how far would they go to keep the truth hidden? The more Fiona investigated, the more it seemed like the case was leading her into a tangled mess of deceit and betrayal. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the answer was just out of reach. What had happened to Alexander McCallum? And what would it take to uncover the truth? Was the mystery of the missing groom just the tip of the iceberg, or was it something much darker than anyone had imagined? In the end, there was only one thing certain: someone knew more than they were telling. And Fiona was determined to find out who it was, no matter how dangerous the truth turned out to be. Detective Fiona Muir arrived at the scene just as the first of the police vehicles pulled into the quiet town of Inverness. The calm, serene atmosphere of the wedding venue had transformed into a frantic zone of chaos and confusion. Claire's trembling hands, her tear-streaked face, and the scattered guests created a surreal picture, like something out of a nightmare. It was supposed to be a celebration, but it had quickly become a mystery no one could explain. Fiona was no stranger to strange cases, but this one was different. There was something about Alexander's disappearance that didn't sit right with her. Something felt staged, something felt planned. The groom, a man with a successful business, a loving fiancé, and seemingly no enemies, was now missing. And for what reason? That was the question that gnawed at her from the moment she stepped onto the scene. The investigation began with the usual questions. The family. The guests. Anyone who had seen something, heard something, anything. But as Fiona began to piece together the accounts from those who had been there, she realized the contradictions were piling up faster than she could sort them out. Alexander's family, his parents, Simon and Jennifer, seemed genuinely lost. They didn't know where their son had gone, they didn't know what had driven him to disappear. But there was something strange about their reactions. They were grieving, yes, but it was as though they were grieving for a stranger. Were they hiding something? Were they just in shock, or were they covering up a secret they didn't want to expose? Then there was Claire's brother, Daniel Forsyth. Calm, collected, almost too calm considering the circumstances. When Fiona questioned him, he gave the kind of answers that seemed just a little too rehearsed. He was concerned, yes, but his worry didn't seem genuine. His eyes didn't match his words. Every time Fiona dug a little deeper, she noticed how he shifted uncomfortably, how his answers became just a touch evasive. There was something off about him, something hidden beneath his polite exterior. But what was it? Was he truly grieving his sister's fiancé, or did he know something more? The investigation took an unexpected turn when Fiona received a phone call. It wasn't from anyone connected to the wedding, nor was it from anyone at the scene. It was an anonymous tip. The voice on the other end was calm, but the information it provided was anything but. Alexander had been seen leaving the wedding venue, not alone, but with a woman. A woman who no one recognized. The woman wasn't a guest. She wasn't from the town. The caller claimed they saw Alexander walk out of the church with this mysterious figure just moments before the ceremony started. Fiona's mind raced. Why hadn't anyone seen her before? Why hadn't any guests mentioned her? And why had Alexander left the venue with a stranger? It didn't make sense. At least, it didn't make sense at first. Was this the break she needed? Was the mysterious woman the key to unlocking the truth behind Alexander's disappearance? Or was this just another dead end, a false lead designed to mislead her? Fiona couldn't be sure, but one thing was clear: the investigation had just gotten more complicated. The woman could be anyone, an acquaintance, a stranger, a threat. The more Fiona thought about it, the more it gnawed at her. Could this woman be involved in Alexander's disappearance? Or was she an innocent bystander caught in a web of lies and confusion? The unanswered questions were piling up, and Fiona had to track this woman down, if she even existed. The police had no record of her. No one at the venue had seen her. But the caller had been adamant. She was real. As Fiona dug deeper into Alexander's past, more unsettling details began to surface. He wasn't as perfect as everyone had believed. Alexander had secret financial troubles, large debts that had been mounting for months. There were rumors that he had been involved in shady deals, people he owed money to, and deals that hadn't gone as planned. But why hadn't anyone mentioned this before? His business, his family, Claire, they all seemed blindsided by this revelation. Was it possible that Alexander's disappearance was connected to something darker than anyone had imagined? His business dealings, his debts, and this mysterious woman began to form a tangled web of suspicion. Was it a business partner who had been involved? Had Alexander gotten mixed up in something dangerous? The more Fiona uncovered, the more it became clear that Alexander's life had been far more complicated than anyone had ever realized. But still, the question remained: where was he? And why had he disappeared on his wedding day? What had driven him to leave his fiancée at the altar, without a single word, without even a note? Had he been running from something? Or was there something more sinister at play? The family seemed to be hiding something. Claire's brother Daniel had been acting strange from the very start, but now, Fiona was beginning to wonder if he had a bigger role in this disappearance than anyone realized. Was he connected to Alexander's financial troubles? Or was he simply caught in the chaos of a situation that spiraled out of control? As the investigation unfolded, Fiona found herself at the edge of a cliff, staring down into an abyss of unanswered questions. Alexander McCallum had vanished, and with every lead, every new discovery, Fiona was getting closer to the truth, closer to understanding why a groom would disappear without a trace. But the deeper she went, the more tangled the story became. Someone was lying, and Fiona needed to figure out who before the truth slipped through her fingers entirely. But as the pieces of the puzzle started to fit together, another question loomed large: was the disappearance of Alexander McCallum just the beginning of something far more dangerous? And who else might be involved in the dark secrets that were about to be revealed? Could the investigation uncover a network of lies, or was someone, or something, trying to keep the truth hidden at all costs? The answers were just within reach, but every step closer to the truth seemed to bring Fiona closer to danger. Was she about to uncover a truth that no one wanted to face? Or would she become the next person to vanish into the shadows? The investigation, which had seemed to hit dead end after dead end, suddenly took an unexpected turn. It wasn't the break anyone had been hoping for, but it was a break nonetheless. The case was building toward a trial, and despite the lack of answers about Alexander McCallum's whereabouts, the police had managed to piece together enough circumstantial evidence to bring charges against Daniel Forsyth, Claire's brother. Daniel had always been a person of interest, but as the investigation progressed, it became increasingly clear that his actions leading up to the wedding had been suspicious, to say the least. His calm demeanor and reluctance to reveal key details now seemed more like calculated moves than simple grieving. The more they dug into his life, the more inconsistencies emerged. Daniel had been in contact with Alexander in the days leading up to the wedding, despite what he'd originally told the police. Worse still, he had planned a meeting with Alexander the night before the ceremony, an unaccounted-for meeting that hadn't been mentioned by anyone else, not even Claire. It was as if Daniel knew something no one else did, and this secret meeting was key to understanding what had truly happened. Daniel's involvement in the disappearance was now undeniable. The police presented evidence that he had been trying to cover his tracks, wiping phone records, deleting messages, and even lying about his whereabouts on the night of Alexander's vanishing. It seemed as though Daniel might have had the motive, the means, and now, the opportunity. The trial was set to begin, and Claire, devastated and confused, had no idea where the truth would take her. Could her brother have been involved in something so monstrous? Could he have had a hand in the disappearance of the man who was supposed to marry his sister? But just when it seemed like the case was headed toward a straightforward conclusion, something unexpected happened. A woman, one no one had heard of, stepped forward. She had been in the shadows throughout the investigation, staying quiet, waiting. She was an enigma, no one had even suspected her existence until she made contact with the authorities. And what she revealed sent shockwaves through the courtroom. The woman, who had been hiding in plain sight, admitted to having been with Alexander on the night before his wedding. She wasn't a random stranger, as initially suspected. She was someone from Alexander's past, someone he had known for years. And her story was one of betrayal, manipulation, and secrets that no one could have possibly guessed. She revealed that Alexander had been trying to escape from something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. It wasn't just about financial troubles or a love triangle, it was about people from his past who had ties to criminal organizations, people who wanted him dead. Alexander's disappearance, it turned out, was part of a much larger scheme, and Daniel Forsyth had been caught in the crossfire. The woman confessed that she had been there when Alexander made the decision to disappear, to fake his own death, to escape the people who were threatening him. But as the woman spoke, she dropped a bombshell: she wasn't the only one who knew where Alexander had gone. She claimed there was someone else, someone with much more to lose, and someone whose name had never once come up during the investigation. This person was still out there, and they were watching. The courtroom was left stunned as the implications of her confession began to sink in. Daniel Forsyth had been implicated, yes, but what if he wasn't the one pulling the strings? What if he had been misled, manipulated, or even blackmailed by someone far more powerful? The jury was thrown into turmoil. With a confession that deep, the question arose: was Daniel Forsyth guilty of his sister's fiancé's disappearance, or had he been an unwilling pawn in a game much larger than he ever realized? But it wasn't just Daniel's fate that was on the line anymore. The mysterious woman's testimony revealed a chilling truth that could change everything. Alexander McCallum's disappearance wasn't just a failed wedding or a missing man, it was part of a twisted web of deceit, crime, and manipulation that had been carefully hidden from view. The question now wasn't just where Alexander was, it was who had been pulling the strings all along. And if Alexander had truly escaped to start a new life, was he still alive? Or had he fallen victim to the very people he had tried to escape? The woman's confession left everyone with more questions than answers. The trial that was supposed to bring closure now seemed to open the door to a much darker world, a world that no one had known existed. Was Daniel Forsyth guilty, or had he been another victim in a game he didn't understand? Was the truth really as simple as it appeared, or was there more to this case than anyone could comprehend? The jury deliberated, but the weight of the case seemed to hang over them like a storm cloud. As the final moments of the trial drew near, one question lingered in the air: would justice be served, or was there a much more sinister truth still waiting to be uncovered? Could anyone truly understand the depth of the deception that had led to Alexander McCallum's disappearance? Or were they all being played in a game where the rules had yet to be revealed? With the case at a boiling point, the answer remained uncertain. What happened next would change the course of the investigation forever. Could anyone trust what had been said, or were they all victims of a carefully crafted lie? The truth, it seemed, was far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. And as the trial continued, the questions piled up, threatening to drown everyone involved in a sea of doubt and betrayal. The story of Alexander McCallum's disappearance is a chilling reminder that even the most perfect days can take a dark turn. A wedding, a moment supposed to mark the beginning of a shared life, was twisted into a nightmare that no one could have foreseen. A groom vanished, leaving nothing behind but questions, suspicion, and an unraveling story that would shake everyone involved to their core. It's a stark reality that no matter how solid the foundation of a life may seem, secrets and lies can shatter it in an instant. This case isn't just about a missing person, it's about trust. It's about how little we truly know those closest to us, and the lengths they'll go to protect their darkest truths. Alexander's family, Claire, even Daniel, they all seemed like innocent victims in this tragic story, but with each layer that was peeled back, it became clear that no one was without their own secrets. Secrets that, once revealed, painted a very different picture than the one they had shown to the world. But what does that mean for justice? Was Daniel Forsyth guilty of something more than just his involvement in a missing person case? Or was he a pawn in a game orchestrated by someone far more dangerous than anyone realized? The answers, it seems, are not so easy. We are left to question everything we think we know. Could the woman who appeared out of nowhere, claiming to have been part of Alexander's life, be telling the truth? Or was she simply another piece in the puzzle, crafted to throw the investigation off course? It's easy to assume that the truth is just waiting to be discovered, that it's just a matter of time before the facts line up. But what if the truth is far more complicated, something that no one is prepared to face? What if there is something much darker at play, something deeper than the simple disappearance of a man on his wedding day? As each new lead unfolds, the stakes grow higher, and it seems that the answers everyone is looking for only lead to more questions. What would you do if you were faced with the horrifying realization that someone close to you might not be who they appear to be? What if the person you trust most is the one hiding the darkest secret? Would you be able to confront them, or would you, too, be swept away by the web of lies they've spun around you? The truth about Alexander McCallum's disappearance has not yet been fully uncovered, and as the case continues to unfold, it remains unclear whether anyone will ever truly know what happened to him. Was he the victim of a cruel plot, or did he, too, play a role in something far darker than anyone could have imagined? And more chillingly, what if he isn't the only one hiding in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to make his move? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Was Daniel Forsyth guilty? Or was someone else pulling the strings behind the scenes? We want to hear your theories. The truth is still out there, but the question is, who will find it first? Thank you for joining us on this chilling tale of deception, loss, and mystery. The story of Alexander McCallum's disappearance leaves us with more questions than answers, each one more disturbing than the last. The twists, the secrets, and the lies, everything points to a truth that may never be fully uncovered. As the investigation drags on, the dark shadows of betrayal grow larger, and we're left wondering if the true culprits will ever be brought to light. But one thing is certain, there's more to this story than meets the eye. If this case has left you as shaken as it has us, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another gripping true crime story. In our next episode, we'll dive into another shocking case that will challenge everything you thought you knew about justice, morality, and the human condition. You won't want to miss it. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves dark, gripping true crime mysteries. The truth is out there, and together, we'll uncover it. Stay tuned.